All right, let's do some more work with HTML and CSS. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to create a little calendar page. So I have kind of laid out a little design of what I think I want to try to make. So this is just, I'm using Google Drawing here as a templating tool. You can use a lot of platforms. There's something called Figma, which is really good for designing kind of wireframes for what web pages might look like. Canva is another good one. Google Drawing is usually good enough for simple things. Um, so we're going to do this. So I'm going to create a page. So I've just kind of lined out what I want so that we can go through the elements of the HTML and then how we're going to build this up with some styling on it. So this is going to be a calendar page. It's going to have a title that says upcoming events. It's going to have these 5 events in it. It's going to be an image on each one, and the each event will be boxed a little bit, and we'll have a title and a date and time and a location. And then there's going to be a little background around that, and the background of the individual events will be different uh, than the background of the page. And I'm also just kind of saying here that the thing's going to be centered in the page. It's not going to be, it's not going to be full width. We have just kind of a quick idea of what we want. So it's often a good idea to try to draw these things out or sketch them out ahead of time. You don't have to do it with a drawing tool. You can do it with a pencil and a piece of paper. But this helps because when we look at this, we're going to see the elements that we have here. So what do we have? We have this whole piece, which is the body, or really this is the wrapper. So this whole page is the body. Okay, so the drawing page is the body. So that's the HTML body element. Here we have like a little wrapper that is the content elements. And so that's going to be a div. Inside the content elements, we have a heading. So that's going to be a div. And then we have this repeating list of what I'll call an event row. And each event row has an image in it, and it's got a title, and it's got a date and time, and it's got a location. So I'm going to have a div. So I'm going to have the whole body, and inside the body, I'm going to have a div wrapper, which is going to be this blue box on the background. There's going to be a header div here, which is going to have probably an H1 in it. And then I'm going to have another div, which is going to be an event row. And inside that event row div, I'm going to have a div for the image. I'm going to have a div for the text. And inside that div for the text, I'm going to have 3 additional divs uh, that are going to be the event title, the name, or the location, um, and the location. Okay, so we can start working those out. And when we get there, this may not actually be 3 different divs. When we get here to the event information, we might be able to just space that out using paragraphs, but we'll see when we get there. We'll try it with paragraphs first, and then if that doesn't work, we'll do divs. All right, so how do we start? Well, what I think we should do to start with is we should try to get this outer wrapper on the page, and we should give it some width so that it doesn't take up the whole page, maybe. And then we should put the title in, and then let's do one of the event rows. So wrapper first, and then the title. So we want to do the wrapper because we see it's not taking up the whole width of the page. You can see it's got space on either side here. So let's call that's maybe, I don't know, just call that 70%, or we could call it 900 pixels. We'll just pick some arbitrary numbers. Okay, so let's start coding it up. So we come here to our VS Code, and I've already got a few things set up ready to go here. I've already created my index, oops, misnamed that, my index HTML. And I've got a calendar.css in a CSS subfolder, and I've got 5 images that I've already picked. These images are all about the same size, about 640 by 420, right in there. I could have picked images of different sizes, but just to be easy so that it kind of lines up, I picked images of all the same size. You can edit images, so you can use a cropping tool in most, on the Mac, there's a program called Preview. I'm sure there's one on Windows. Used to be called Paint way back when I used Windows a long time ago. But also there's tools like Canva that are free that you can use to do image editing and cropping and things like that. But I've just picked some images off Pixabay that are roughly 640 by 420. And so nothing special about these, I just picked some. Okay. So now let's go ahead and start the page. So I'm going to do a single exclamation point here to get my template page. And then I'm going to go ahead and update the title. And we're going to call it um, my event calendar. Okay, so there's my title. Now I'm going to need to link my style sheet. So remember my style sheet is here in the CSS subfolder. So I do a link, style sheet, and then that uses an href, and it's going to be CSS slash calendar.css. Okay. All right. So, and then, so let's just work that and make sure that we have those linked up. So the way I always like to make sure I have things linked up is I'll just come in and on the body, I'll just make the background color on body. I'm just going to turn it red. That way we just know the style sheet is linked properly. We're not going to leave that, of course. Okay, so now so all I've done is just get my template set up, put in the heading, link the style sheet. So now let's go ahead and load that into the browser. I'm going to copy the path. I'm going to come over here to my incognito window, paste it in. Okay, and something's up because I don't have the style sheet. So let's see what happened here. So I can inspect this and we can see what we're missing here. So I have failed to load the style sheet. So calendar.css is not found somewhere. So let's go ahead and figure out what I did wrong there. href. Let's see, style sheet. Let's see, I have made an error in there somewhere. Okay, error here somewhere. So let's go ahead and look at reload our page here. And so so what I'm looking at here is I've gone to the inspection tab. So remember you can right click and hit inspect. And then we get our inspection panel where we can work with the contents of our page. So if you look at the console tab here, you can see that I'm getting an error that says file, Dropbox, Alamo College /CSS counter.css is not loaded. And so I'm seeing the problem here is that I'm in the week 8 subfolder. So somehow I've gotten my folder structures wrong. So if I go back here and look, and sure enough, my index.html is not in my week 8 folder. It's in the root folder. So I can just go ahead and move that in. So now that's moved. So now you can see it's in now that my index.html. So my folder structure was wrong. I had my index.html in the wrong folder. Okay, so now if we save this again, let's go ahead and recopy our path, load that up here. So, but see, that's why we always, okay, red background. Okay, but that's why we always test just to make sure that we've got everything wired up properly. Okay, first things first, let's get rid of that annoying red background. Okay, so now what we want is we're going to create the whole wrapper div. Okay, so we're going to call that a div, and I'm going to give it an ID of a wrapper. Okay, so this is going to be the div that goes around the whole element. This is going to be this whole div right here. Okay, then I'm going to put a div in here for the heading, and this is going to be an H2. So I'm going to have a div with upcoming events in it. That's going to be inside my, and I'm just going to give this an ID of heading. Okay, so now I'm naming these with IDs. I'm using an ID because there's only going to be one of these on the page. When I get to the event rows, I'm going to use classes instead of IDs because I'm going to have multiple of them, and I want to be able to style them up individually. Inside this, I'm just going to put an H1, and we're going to say upcoming events. Okay, let's go ahead and load that and see what it looks like on our page. Okay, so here it is. So you can't really see any of these divs because they don't have there's no borders. So what I also like to do while I'm testing is I like to just give everything a border so that I can kind of see where the edges of my elements are and I can see how they're lining up. So I'm going to come back into my style sheet and I'm just going to say for all of the divs and all of the paragraphs and all of the H2s, um, div, paragraphs, H2. So for all of these elements, um, let's just give it a border, solid black 1 pixel. Okay. Now we'll be able to see all the elements on the screen as I'm working on them. Okay. So there we go. All right. So the H2 is here. It's got a div. The H2 is not really highlighting there because it's an H1, not an H2. So we can see now I'm not going to leave that border. Okay, so I'm just using that so as I start to move the events around and put them together, then I can see them how they're fitting on the screen. Okay, so before we start styling, let's go ahead and add an event row. Okay, so the event row is going to have a div. This is going to be the wrapper of the row. So if we look at our drawing again, this outer box is going to be the event row, and then there's going to be a div here that's got an image in it, and then a div here that's got the text in it. So it's going to be 3 divs nested with paragraphs and images inside the divs. So here we have div. It's going to be a class. We're going to call it event row. Okay, and inside the event row, I'm going to put another div. This is going to be class. We'll call it event image. So that will be the div for the image, and inside there's going to be an image tag. Okay, let's go ahead and put let's see, the first one we have is the travel abroad seminar. So we have the travel.jpg source equals images/travel.jpg. Okay, so we're just going to stick that in. Let's do the next div. It's going to be the wrong size, but we'll figure that out. So this is going to be class, and we're going to call it let's call it details, event details. Okay. And then inside the details, we're going to have 3 paragraphs. Let's try it with paragraphs instead of divs. So we're going to have a paragraph, and we're going to call this paragraph class of event title. Okay. Let's go ahead and say travel abroad seminar. Then there's going to be another paragraph. This is going to be class of event date time. And it's going to say October 20th. Let's see, and it was 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Okay. Now this is just made of information, so it doesn't really matter what these things are. I'm just using this as an experiment. And then we're going to have event location. So that's going to be where the event is being held. And this one is in room 102. Okay. So now let's load that and see what it looks like. So remember, we've got borders on all of this stuff, so we're going to be able to see it when we load the page, and it's all in there. Okay, but it's not lined up. Okay, so how do we approach this? So before we add more paragraph elements or more event row elements, what I want to do is I just want to line everything up. So the first thing I want to do is I want to take this wrapper and I want to make it only take up part of the screen. So instead of taking up 100% of the screen, I want to maybe make it go from like here to here. So let's just arbitrarily call it 900 pixels. Okay, let's come back to our CSS for the element named wrapper that has an ID. I'm going to give it a max width of 900 pixels. Okay, let's load that and see what it does. Okay, so now we see that it's not taking up the whole width of the viewport, but it's left justified, and I want it to be centered. So to center things, we use margin auto. Okay, and again, you'll be able to read about this in the Odin project, and also you can Google this. If you say, how do I center a div? You're going to find quick help on that. So it's going to be in the readings and in the resources that are posted on Canvas. But these things are all very simple, very straightforward. We're using very simple CSS at this point. So to center something, we use margin auto. So once I do that, when I reload, now we see that my wrapper div is this one, and it is centered. And I can come in and say, show me the wrapper, so we can see that it's got margin on the sides. And so here, if we highlight it, we can see that it's got this kind of brownish color, kind of brownish orange on the edges. And if we look over here at our little grid over here, it says that it's got margin on the sides here. So we can see that it is being centered. Okay, now let's go ahead and center the title, the upcoming events title. So the way we want to do that is we have a heading ID here, so we can just do text align for the heading, okay? For the heading ID. So we can just come in and say heading, text align, center. Okay. Let's see what that does. Okay. That's centered. Let's make that a little bigger. So we can come in here and we can say for the heading, for the H1, we can make it a relative increase. So for the H1, if you look to see how big it is, we can come in here. We can just right click on that and say inspect, and it'll highlight it here. We can see on our we can see how it's being default styled. So if we come to upcoming events, we highlight that over here on the left side, and then we come over to the computed tab on the styles, we can see all the styling that's being applied. Now, most of this is being applied to this is just the default style that Chrome is using. So we can see that it's got a 32 pixel font size. So we could increase that to another absolute font by saying 48 maybe or something like that. But we can also increase that by using an EM, so which is a relative font size. So we can come in and we can say font size 1.5 EM. Okay, so we'll just say let's make it 1.5 bigger, 1.5% bigger than it normally would be. Okay. Whoops, that is not the right one. Is it Aryan? I can't remember. Let's see. Nope, that is not right. So let me see. No, 1.5 EM is the default of the regular font size, not the H1. So what we want to do is, since it's an H1, so 1.5 EM would be 1.5 the default font size for the page, which is probably something like 12. So H1 has a bigger font size. So let's just do the math ourselves. So it's 32. So 1.5 of that is going to be 48 pixels. Okay, my bad. All right, so I've been writing this stuff for 20 years. I still make mistakes and forget how to do stuff. Okay, so here now that's bigger. It still has the border around it. We can probably get rid of that border. We'll get rid of that in a minute. Next thing, we need to make this image smaller, and then we need to put these divs side by side. So let's go ahead and for the class event image, for the images inside that class. So this says for any class, for any image that's contained within event image, because we have a space here, not a comma. So up here we're using commas, which means for div and paragraphs and H1s, use a border. But here we're saying for any image tag that's inside an event image class, because we're using the period for the class and we're using the hashtag for the ID. So any image that's inside the class, let's just set the width. Let's just pick 150 pixels and see what that looks like. Okay. All right. That's probably good enough. We could tweak that around and see if we wanted to make it bigger or smaller, but I think let's leave it for that for now. Okay. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to make we want to make this div. This is the event details div and the event image div. We can see that they're 100% width of their container, which is the wrapper div. So what we want to do is we want to put them side by side and we want to make them smaller. So I'm going to make the this image div. Let's just say we'll make that how about we make that 35% of the total, and we'll make this one 60%. So that'll be 95%. So, and then we're going to put them side by side using the display um, tag. So by giving a percentage for the width, what we're doing is we're saying put them together and have that take up 35% of its container width. So let's go ahead and say event image width 35%. Okay, and see now we see it's smaller. See, it's got the borders moved in. And let's go ahead and for the event details, let's go ahead and make that width of 60%. Now I'm not making it 100% just because it's easier to line things up when it's not 100%. So here now we see that they're smaller. So now I just need to put them side by side. So now the way I do that is I'm going to use the display inline attribute. So and what I want to do is on the event row, I want all the divs. So So I want this div is the event image, this div is the event details, and they're both inside this div, which is the event row. So I want to take all the divs inside event row and I want to make them display inline. Okay, so we're going to do this. We're going to say event row, and all the divs that are inside those, I'm going to say display inline inline block. Okay, and I'm going to and we're going to give it a margin auto. Okay. Oops, left out a semicolon. Okay, and there we go. So now let's load that. Okay, so now these are not lined up top to bottom. You're seeing that? So the image is a little higher, and this is really just padding around the elements here. So if we look at those, we can see that we've just got padding in there around that. And so what we can do is we can use the vertical align on these, and so we can say vertical align. And that is not center, that's actually middle is the term for that. And so now we see that they're lined up. Okay, so now we've got them side by side. And we should probably, it's not quite centered here, so let's go ahead and center that. And we'll just say margin auto. To center that, we need to, well, let's just leave it, it's fine. Okay, so we, so next thing we want to do is we want to center this image in its block. So let's go ahead and here, so what we want to do is we want to text align the div that's containing the image. So we have this image element that's inside this event image div. So we come to the event image div and we just say text align center. Okay, that's going to center the image. Notice how I'm just trying to do one thing at a time. Okay, I did a little bit of HTML, I got it on the screen. Then I am just styling one little image, one thing at a time, trying to make sure that I have it the way that I want. Okay, so so that way we're not trying to do too much at once. We're not getting confused. Okay, and we're making sure that each thing that we're doing is testing and is being tested and working. Okay, so now let's take this travel abroad seminar. This needs to be a title. And so we need to make it bold and increase the font size. Okay, so let's go ahead and say that's good. That's the event title paragraph. So we called that event title, and it's a paragraph. Okay, and it's got a class event title. So our selector here should be event title. Okay, because that's the class, that's a paragraph. That's the class we have. And so let's say font size. And here we'll just use pixels. We can say font weight. Let's make it bold. Okay. Let's go ahead and load that. Okay, that's bold. Now here, these two, we should make them a little bigger. They're a little puny. Let's make them a little bigger. So those are called event date time and event location. Okay. So we can come and say event dash date time and or event dash location. So we're going to style both of these. So our selector is saying either one of these apply the element. And so we're going to say font size. And let's call it, let's see, 24 pixels. Let's do 20 pixels. So it'll be big, but not bigger than the title. Okay. Now there's all this spacing in between that. So what is causing that? We want to find out. So if we come over here and we find travel abroad, we right click it, we get inspect. It's going to highlight it in our elements pane here. And we can see that it's got that kind of orangey salmon color around it. And we can see over here that that's the margin. Okay, so what's happening is the margin is big, is too big. So we want to cut that margin down because we really want those values to be close. So if we come in and we can play around with the style a little bit and we can say, if I were to make the margin here 2 pixels. So you see now we can see that it's gotten much smaller, right? Okay, but really I just want the top and the bottom, but let's just say 2 pixels on the margin. And then we're going to do the same thing on these because the date, time, and the location all have the margin as well. So event title, margin 2 pixels. And then this one as well. Let's see, that may be too close together, but let's see. No, I think that's probably okay. All right, and then it's all vertically aligned. Okay, and we're good. Okay, so let's get rid of the borders around here because the borders are starting to bother me. So I'm going to take the border off the H1. I'm going to take the border off these internal divs, but I'm going to leave the border on wrapper. Okay, so I want the border on my wrapper. No, I don't want the border on the wrapper. I want the border on the event row. So, because if you look at our drawing, the event rows have a border. Okay, so we're going to take all the borders off, and then we're just going to put the border back on the event row. So here in our kind of testing, we're just going to get rid of that. Okay, and I'm just going to cut, I'm just going to paste that into event row. Okay, now you may have noticed that I'm editing my style sheet. I'm inserting things in a certain order. And the way I'm inserting things is typically from the outside in. So I've got the wrapper at the top because it's the most encompassing element. The heading is next because it's at the top, H1s, and then event row div, event image. So I'm just kind of going in order of the way things are nested in with each other. That just helps me as I look through things, I can just kind of find things by scrolling down because it's in order. It does not matter what order it's in, but it does help me for debugging and alignment. Okay, so now all the borders are gone except for the one I wanted. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now let's duplicate this event row and get some other events in. Okay, so we shouldn't have to change much because we're using classes here for all the event details and the event titles and all that. If we create another one, it should just pop right in. So if we come in here and we just say copy the event row. Okay, so I'm copying that and I'm making sure that I get my alignment because I don't want to get leftover divs. I'm just going to leave some spaces in here. Spaces in HTML are not normally necessary, but sometimes when you're coding this by hand, you leave the spaces just to help you make sure you get things lined up. Okay, so let's go ahead and put in two more and let's refresh. All right, that's working. Okay, so let's go ahead and code these up. So we're going to have a total of 5. Okay, so now let's change all the text. Okay, so here's the travel seminar. If we look at the next one is going to be pizza party, special guest, financial planning, faculty reception for math majors. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and code that up just so that we can get that done. So the second one is the pizza party. Okay, and I have this in a separate screen so I can read it without having to flip back and forth. Okay, so this is just going to be typing pizza party for new students. Okay, and it's going to be October 21st, and it is 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. Whoops, deleted my paragraph. And it's going to be in the cafeteria. Okay, let's get that lined up. We want to make sure we're keeping all our indentations straight. Remember, the browser doesn't care about indentation, but you do because if you make a mistake and you have tags orphaned, it's going to be hard to fix. So the next one is the band concert. So this is going to be special guest in concert. And that's going to be October 31st from 7 o'clock p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Okay. And it's going to be in the auditorium. So, but notice that when I'm working on this, the first thing I did was get one element correct. Okay. And then I go back and change the other elements. So now as I'm changing them, all the styling is being maintained and everything's good. So I just get the one element right before I start adding a bunch of stuff. Because if I come in and I have duplicated this div, this event row multiple times, and I need to change a class, then I have to change it 5 different times and it's going to be a mess. So I try to I'll get one of them right and then come in and fix the others. Okay, so now the fourth one is the financial planning. So that's the money picture. And this is financial planning and budgeting. And that's going to be November 2nd, 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Okay. And that's going to be in room 304. Last is this is the reception. Snacks is the image there. And it's going to be faculty reception for math majors. Okay. If you're not a math major, sorry, no snacks for you. Let's see, November 3rd, November 7th, 5 o'clock p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Okay. And it's going to be in the faculty dining room. Okay, so now let's load that up. That's all saved. Okay, that's looking good. Now our event rows are a little close together here. So what we should probably split them apart. So we need to put some space in between each one. So what we can do here is I can just put some margin at the bottom of each one. So if I put just like 10 pixels at the bottom of each of these, then they'll be spaced out a little bit. So let's go ahead back to our CSS. Let's go to event row up here at the top, and let's just say margin at the bottom, put 10 pixels in. Okay. That should do it. Okay. Maybe a little more. Let's do 15 pixels just to see what it looks like. Okay, I like that. Okay, now let's put some color on it. So what I want to do is I want to come up with a color palette. I'm going to turn the background of the whole page in some color, and I'm going to pick a color other than black for the text, and I'm going to do alternating rows so that even the odd rows are slightly different color just to give them some pop. Now, how do I pick a color palette? Well, there's this great website out there called Color Hex. Color-hex.com. You can come in here and you can put in any color value here, and you can get a whole bunch of detail about it. So here's a color. This is hex ID 93C47D. It's kind of a greenish color. We can see it's got all these different RGB values. These are all the different ways that computers will turn this, will make this color green. You can also see the shades and hues. So you can see here are related images getting darker. Here are related colors getting lighter. So if you're coming up with a palette, you can really search for great colors using color-hex.com. And if you have a color, maybe you have a picture or maybe you have a drawing or something on your computer. On the Mac, there's a utility called Digital Color Meter where you can just turn that on and then you can just hover the cursor over and it will tell you what color you're looking at. There's something similar on Windows, I'm sure. But if you're trying to come up with colors, that's a great tool. Also you can do on Color Hex is they have palettes. So we can come in here and say, show me some palettes. Okay, so where they've actually taken some colors and they've put some together that people are using or people have suggested, colors that are complementary. Okay, so you can come in here. We can look at the popular palettes. And let's see. So this cappuccino, that's a little dark for what we're doing. I tend to go in the kind of the bluish range. This teal one is nice. I'm going to use this beautiful blues. This is a color range. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this light shade here as my background. I'm going to use this really dark blue as for all my text. So it gets a really nice popping contrast. And then I'm going to alternate my rows using these two kind of middle shades. So and these colors are complementary. Somebody that has a better eye for color than me has kind of put them together. And I'm just going to use it. Okay, so first thing, let's turn the background of our page this blue. Okay, so that is B3CDE0. I'm just going to copy that. So what I want is for the whole background of my page to be that color. Okay, so let's do that. So we do that in the text. We're just going to put that on the body as background color. Okay, and let's load that and see what that looks like. Okay, all right. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't do that. No, I want this to be darker. Okay, so let's move up a little bit and let's use let's go up maybe this one. I don't know. What do you think? Um, let's go for this middle one maybe. Yeah, let's do that. So let's do text here with the dark. Let's use this middle one as the background because we want the background to be a little darker maybe than the event rows, and then we'll alternate the event rows on this lighter color. Okay, change the plans. So the background is going to be this one, 5, 5, because this just looks too light. That's just going to wash out, I think. But but you decide what you want. This is your page. When you do it, you can do it how you want. So I'm just copying my hex color in. I'm using the hashtag and the hex color. I could here, I'm using 005B96, which is what I'm getting here. I could also use RGB if I wanted, but these are the color codes that I can use to do that. Okay, all right, that might be a little better. Okay, now let's turn the text into this dark color. So I'm gonna use the darkest here, 0114FB. Okay, and so what we want here is we want the H2 text and the paragraphs to all be that color, with the H1. So let's say color. We're using color here, not background color, because we're at the text color. And then I can say here for event details, I'm just going to use the color here. And that'll apply to all of the paragraphs that are inside that, the title and the date and time. Okay. All right. See, it's turned this darker blue. That's nice. Okay. So now let's make this border. Maybe we make that border a little bigger. And maybe we put some space in between the image, maybe. So we'll put some padding on these divs. Remember, padding is inside the border and margin is outside the border. So if I want to put some padding inside this event row, I'll get some space in between the edge of the event row and the picture. So event row padding, we'll just do padding all around. Let's do 15 pixels and just see what it looks like. Okay. All right. That's good. Okay. Let's make this border a little thicker. So let's go ahead on the event row. The border is black. Let's match the border to the colors of the text. So the text is 011F4B, which I think is still on the clipboard. Yep. And then let's make it 3 pixels just so that it's thicker. Okay. All right, that's good. All right. Now what I want to do is I want to alternate the colors of these. So I'm going to we have these blue palettes here, this darker blue and kind of this lighter blue, kind of grayish. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the even or the odd rows are going to be this light color, and then the even rows are going to be this color. So in order to do that, we need to label the rows. Okay, so I need to put a class on this row, excuse me, to make it odd, and this one to make it even. Okay, so I can come down back to my HTML, go to my first row. Okay, so this is event row, and I'm just going to add a second class, space odd. The first one is odd. Okay, whoops, that's the second one. Here's the first one. First one is odd. The second one is even. The third one is odd. And so now by doing this, I have 2 class names. So this class is event row and odd. So now the element has both class names, and so that I can address each class individually, or I can address them together. So odd. So now I have those labeled. Excuse me, sorry about that. So now what I want to do is I want to change the background color of the evens and the odds. So now we can come in here and I can say for every event row that is even, and I want them both. So here I want to do event row and even. So I want both classes. So if an element has both classes, event row and even, then change the background color to be, let's see, what were we going to use for the evens? We're going to use this this darker one for the evens, right? And then the lighter one here. So the darker one is, oops, let's go back to the palette. The darker one is here. So that's going to be the odd one, actually. Excuse me. Excuse me. Okay, so event row odd, background color. Okay, so we want the lighter one to be odd and the darker one to be even. So the lighter one here is 64, the odd, no, that's the darker one. So that's going to be the odd ones, right? Okay, and then this one is the lighter one is going to be the even ones. Okay, I think that's got it. So now let's go ahead and reload it again. There we go. Okay, upcoming events. All right, so this is not an exceptional web page, but it's still pretty good, styled up. You might object to my colors. I'm not loving the palette at this point. I think this color is a little odd, but I'm going to leave it. So this is our example of creating a useful page. We put multiple divs. We aligned the divs so that they're side by side, and then we addressed repeating elements. So we have this repeating event row, and we applied similar style to each of those elements, and then we were able to alternate the even and the odds there as we go. Okay, so that is an example of creating uh, 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 an HTML page with full style that has repeating information and it begins to approximate something useful.